Mr. Reynolds paced back and forth in front of the chalkboard, his voice laced with irritation. He was a kind of teacher who took pleasure in asserting his authority, often making an example out of students who failed to meet his impossible standards. Today his target was Oliver Brooks, the quiet, disheveled boy who sat in the back of the classroom, always keeping his head down. "Since you seem to find my lessons so uninteresting," Mr. Brooks, Reynolds said, folding his arms, "why don't you come up here and solve this equation for us?" He scrolled a complex problem across the board, a puzzle that even his brightest students would struggle with. A few kids snickered. Others exchanged uneasy glances. It was clear that Reynolds wasn't testing Oliver's skills. He was humiliating him. Oliver hesitated, his hands clenched into fists beneath his desk. He wasn't dumb, but he had learned long ago that standing out only made things worse. Being different meant being a target, but now with all eyes on him, he had no choice. Slowly he rose from his seat, his stomach twisting in knots as he approached the board. His mind worked, rapidly dissecting the problem as he picked up the chalk with steady fingers. He ignored the mocking grin on Reynolds' face, the stifled laughs from his classmates, and instead he let the numbers guide him. Within moments he began writing. His hand moved swiftly, each stroke deliberate, precise. The classroom fell silent. Mr. Reynolds' smirk faltered as Oliver completed the problem in mere seconds. The answer was flawless. Every step was meticulously correct. The students sat in stunned silence, their amusement replaced with a. One girl at the front whispered, "Wha?" Reynolds stared at the board, his mouth opening and closing as if he were searching for something, anything to discredit Oliver. "That's how did you?" Oliver turned around for the first time. He looked his teacher in the eye. "It wasn't that hard," he said simply, then walked back to his seat. The moment was electrifying. A few students clapped before realizing they were breaking an unspoken rule. Reynolds, embarrassed and infuriated, wiped the board clean and hurriedly changed the subject. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. News of Oliver's genius spread like wildfire in the days that followed. Students who had never spoken to him before approached him with questions about homework, and some even invited him to sit with them at lunch. But what mattered most was a change within Oliver himself. For the first time, he felt seen, not as a misfit, but as someone valuable. One afternoon, as Oliver packed his books, a soft voice interrupted him. "Oliver," he turned to see Emily Carter, one of the brightest students in the school, standing by his desk. "Hey," he said. Surprised, she hesitated before speaking. I want to say that what you did the other day was amazing. You shouldn't hide your talent." Oliver shrugged. "It's easier that way." She smiled. "Maybe, but the world needs people like you, people who see things differently." Oliver thought about that all evening. He thought about the way people had looked at him, not with pity, but with admiration. The thought both terrified and excited him. He had spent years trying to shrink himself, to disappear into the background. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to step forward. The next morning, as Mr. droned on about another mathematical theory, Oliver did something he had never done before. He raised his hand. Reynolds blinked, startled. "Yes, Mr. Brooks." Oliver took a deep breath and spoke with confidence. "Actually, there's an easier way to solve that equation." A few students turned to stare, surprised at his boldness. Reynolds' face darkened, but he said nothing as Oliver walked to the front of the class, picked up the chalk, and proved himself once again. This time the applause was thunderous, and for the first time in his life, Oliver smiled, not because he had bested a teacher, but because he finally understood his worth, and no one could take that away from him. In the end, it wasn't about proving Mr. Reynolds wrong. It was about proving to himself that he never needed to hide in the first place.